Welcome back to Politics Nation. America will vote in 38 days, and Democrats are preparing for the possibility the presidential race could be the focus of prolonged legal fights. Democratic Secretaries of State are launching a $5 million fund to assist election officials in these key states of Maine, Michigan, North Carolina, and Nevada, who might face post-election lawsuits. Joining me now is the group's executive director, Travis Brimm. Thank you for joining me today. Travis, let's begin with the legal fund. Why was it started, and how did you decide which states to target your resources?
Well, first, thank you for having me on today, Reverend Sharpton, to talk about this important issue. So again, we are the Democratic Association of Secretaries of State. We do work with the folks who run elections, the head election officials in most states around the country. Look, the reason we set up this legal fund is because we've seen the Trump sect of the Republican Party since 2020 and in 2022 begin to continue to expand the amount of litigation and lawsuits that they are bringing forth to destabilize our democracy. They are less concerned with winning elections at the ballot box in November and a lot more concerned with trying to win them in the courts after the election day. And so we know this problem is coming. They've been forecasting it, and they've been telling us that they're going to even take it even more broad this election cycle. And so we thought it was very important to get ahead of this effort, to have the financial resources to give our election officials the ability to adapt quickly post-election for these fights. Yes, we forecasted those 4 states in our sort of story and launch, but I just want to be clear that we're willing to take this fight and this effort anywhere in the country where it's needed.
Now, while your group is preparing for legal proceedings after the vote, we can see supporters of former President Trump making moves now that appear to lay the groundwork for possible challenges. An election board dominated by MAGA loyalists recently required poll workers to count ballots by hand, possibly leading to massive delays. Even Republicans have objected, with one group challenging the requirement, arguing the board is overstepping its legal authority. In Mississippi, a panel of federal judges that were all appointed by former President Donald Trump heard arguments this week in a case that could upend the rules for counting mail-in ballots that arrive after Election Day, even if they were cast before November 5th. The lawsuit could jeopardize mail ballots cast elsewhere in the country. How concerned are you about all this?
No, look, we're very concerned about it. And I think, voters around the country and activists around the country share that concern. Look, let's call it what it is. This is a massive destabilization effort to, sow distrust in our democracy and candidly disenfranchise voters of color. These are efforts to get rid of vote by mail. These are efforts to create precedent in places to better control electoral outcomes post-election day. That is exactly what it is. And so I think voters should be concerned. And that's exactly why we're launching this effort, and why, if people are curious about learning more, that I'd encourage them to go to demsofstate.org and look for that legal fund button. They can learn more about our efforts and how this money is going to be used.
Now, Republican House Speaker Mike Johnson was asked by NBC News if he would support certifying elections if Vice President Harris were to beat former President Trump. And he seemed to hedge, saying he would follow the Constitution if the election was, quote, fair. What do you make of that statement?
Well, I don't know why Speaker Johnson just can't give a simple yes or no, but I hear a no when I hear the answer to that question. And I think that's what you're hearing from Donald Trump, and I think that's what you're seeing. The purpose of these litigation cases is around the country. They don't care about the results on Election Day. They want to take the votes away from people and steal their voices at the ballot box. And I think that's what we should say about it.
Now, earlier this evening, on that point, at his rally in Wisconsin, Trump noted that he would prosecute people that, quote, cheat on this election, and that, quote, we'll go back to the last one, too, if we're allowed. Your group is ready to fight this election in court if necessary, but I wonder about the consequences if it comes to that. Trump didn't win any of the nearly 6 legal challenges he filed in 2020, and yet he falsely convinced millions of his supporters the results were fraudulent. Are you worried about the effect on our democracy should Trump claim once again the election was stolen, even if his arguments don't succeed in court?
Well, that's why I would argue it's even more important this election cycle. We know he is going to say the election was stolen. We know these fights are coming. That's why we're launching this effort before Election Day, not after Election Day. What our goal is to make sure that we have the financial resources and the systems in place to be able to provide support so that these election officials can adapt as quickly as possible to what will be a wide array of threats. And so we are preparing for that inevitable outcome that you're talking about right now. And I think that there is a ton of concern with voters and activists around the country. And I think people are prepared to fund efforts like this to make sure that people do have the resources to push back and fight back.
Travis Brimm, thank you very much for being on with us tonight. Up next.